This man pretended to be insane for 10 years, but in the end, they discovered that he was a serial killer. In the early 90s, there were 3 brutal murders in a small town in Texas. The police were never able to find out who the killer was, so the case went cold. Fast forward to 2001, when a man called John Wayne Gacy was arrested for burglary. While he was in jail, he started acting strange. He talked to himself, had outbursts, and even tried to harm himself. So the police decided to send him to a psychiatric hospital. At the hospital, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder. He was then sent back to jail, but he still acted strangely, so the prison psychologist suggested that he should be moved to a different facility. John agreed to this, and he was transferred to another prison. In 2012, after more than a decade in prison, John was finally released. But as a condition of his release, he had to wear an ankle monitor and was not allowed to leave Texas. John pretended to be insane for over 20 years. He had hearings in which he talked about voices in his head telling him to do evil things. He said that he heard these voices since he was 14 years old and that he tried to hurt himself many times. The doctors believed him, and he was declared insane. However, in 2016, John's probation officer noticed that he was using his free hand to hold his ankle monitor in place. This meant that John had been faking his insanity for over 10 years. He had convinced everyone around him, including doctors and lawyers, that he was mentally ill, but in reality he was just pretending. When the police searched his house, they found a secret room full of weapons and tools. They also found the DNA of some of his victims. It turned out that John Gacy was a serial killer. He had used his insanity defense to avoid the death penalty. But now the truth was out. He was arrested and charged with murder. At his trial, the prosecution argued that Gacy had planned the murders in the 90s, and that's why there was no evidence of his insanity. They also said that he chose his victims at random and that he lured them to his house by pretending to be a police officer. The defense argued that Gacy was indeed insane and that he had no control over his actions. They also said that the prosecution had no evidence to prove that Gacy was faking his insanity. The jury found Gacy guilty of all charges, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Today, John Gacy is 70 years old, and he is still in prison. He has never admitted to his crimes, and he continues to claim that he is innocent. Some people believe that Gacy was actually innocent, and that he was framed by the police. However, most people agree that he is a serial killer who pretended to be insane for over 20 years. He was a master manipulator who fooled everyone around him, and it wasn't until he was caught that the truth finally came out. What do you think? Was Gacy really innocent, or is he a serial killer who got away with murder for decades? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.